We're going to talk all things Browns for the next half hour or so. Guys, the Browns won against Oakland. Did they really win against Oakland? No. That was a bizarre football game.
Well, as Mike Patton said the other day, he doesn't care about style points. At this point, you're just trying to win games. You move on, and you go from there. I mean, we
encouraging thing for the Browns is that they used to lose games like that, and the way that game was going. I mean, did you stay awake long for the way that game was?
I think it is. We're making progress in the city, though. When fans and people can be unhappy with a win, and be 4-3.
Right.
No, seriously. I mean, they didn't play that well. They didn't offensively. They played fine defensively. Exactly.
Who said that? More? No, some guy at a cap sign. I hear he's okay. If you're watching the show, of course, jump in the comments, sign into your cleveland.com account, and ask questions. Leave any comments you may have as we go along. An injury could come out of this game, unfortunately, to Jordan Cameron, his third concussion. That's kind of the big story right now. What's the latest on Cameron, Tom?
Was not there today as far as was. Now you don't know, and again, when you're starting to get multiple concussions, it's a scary thing.
Yeah, and of course they have that quick turnaround to Cincinnati as well, Branson. So if he doesn't play against Tampa, you got to think 4 days later he's probably not going to go either.
That's true, and that's the unfortunate and the reminder about the NFL. When you have these concussions, it can end careers, and we know it can even go beyond that as far as this protocol. I think that's the best thing for him, and you just pray and hope that things work out for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your third concussion, that's obviously very serious. So replacing Jordan Cameron, looking on the field, you're going to have Jim Dre, you're going to have Gary Barnidge. Both guys have given you some level of production, Branson. Do you trust those guys to at least fill that void a little bit?
Well, why not? And you mentioned there's two guys, so I believe both of them will get some time. Both of them will get an opportunity, and I think it's a good thing that they played a lot earlier in the season. So it's not like they're going to be fresh out there and it's deer in the headlights type of situation. So I think it puts the Browns in a good situation. You have two tight ends that are capable. I mean, they're not Jordan at all, but I think they're capable of at least sustaining that position.
It's funny, Tom, at the beginning of the year you would think, when people kind of listed the guys you can't afford to lose, Jordan Cameron was always on the top of that list. But Dre and Barnidge have kind of shown that, no, they aren't Jordan Cameron, but they can give you production. I didn't hear a lot of people saying Alex Mack, though, and that seems to be the injury that's impacting them a little more.
Yeah, I just because of the again, he's one of those guys I don't think the average fan appreciated how good he really is and how much he means to the team, not just in the blocking, but how smart he is, the calls that he has to make on the line, and how well respected he is as a player. And I do think part of the running game's problem is obviously he's not there. You don't have, you're trying. Nick McDonald's doing his best, but he's not Alex Mack. But the second part of it is now teams are really loading up against the run, and the last two opponents. We were talking to Ben Tate today, and Ben Tate was saying he has some friends on the Raiders team, and they were saying after the game, we weren't going to let you run. We were going to take that away, and you were going to have to beat us passing. So that's something that they're going to have to get, they're going to have to get over now. And I'm sure that the running game will get the line will get a little bit more cohesion with each week because now the deadline's past the great trade deadline. This is who they have. This is the guys they're going to roll with. So for their sake, they have to hope they get better.
You know, and it was interesting, if you're wondering if this coaching staff is kind of searching to find ways to get the running game going. Kiro Small played over 40 snaps in this last game. The new fullback they had. Ray Agnew was rarely over 30. I was kind of looking back at some of the snap trends. So that's got to be related to the fact that, you know, with Alex Mack out, they're kind of scrambling to open up some holes.
Oh, he's there to block. I mean, and that's why they brought him in there to help make some holes out of that position. But it's really something that they have to, even though teams are gearing up for the run, that's something that they have to improve on. They have to somehow make some holes and to get those guys loose.
Which brings up another topic of discussion from Sunday, Isaiah Crowell. 1 carry, 1 catch. Terrence West ended up being the number 2 back. A lot of people did not expect that. Is that going to change this week, Tom?
Well, you hope so, because again, nothing against Ben Tate. I like Ben Tate. But I just think that the Crowell gives you, after Tate, the best opportunity. I just think that he's that slashing type of runner. But again, he's a rookie. He's going, went through some protection issues, ball protection issues, and it's stuff that he has to work through. And the coaching staff doesn't quite have that trust with him yet on that level. But I would think so, because to me, of the 3 guys, he's the one that can really break it. He's the guy that can break a big carry, I think. Even as good as Ben Tate was on his career day against Tennessee, I don't think he had a carry for more than 15 yards.
Yeah, and Branson, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, in the way you gain trust is don't drop the ball.
Yeah.
And that's something that he's going to have to prove. And I think against Tampa Bay, he'll get an opportunity for that. But if somehow he fumbles the ball a little bit more, then he's going to have more time to sit and think about it.
Do you think it was intentional, or do you think it's just kind of the flow of the game? Because Kyle Shanahan said he doesn't really have his hands in who's, in the backfield. He leaves that up to Wilbert Montgomery. Did they just kind of forget about Crowell or something? Because you remember with Terrence West, when they were trying to send a message, he was inactive. So going in, you would think if they knew he wasn't part of the game plan, that he wouldn't have been active either. But he was there, they just didn't use him.
I think Patton said the other day that in hindsight, they probably could have given him a few more touches. So I think sometimes in the flow of the game, you got maybe, again, when you're dealing with 3 running backs, you're not dealing with 2, you're dealing with 3. And to get all those guys, that's, to me, one of the challenges of having 3 active. And to get to touches, somebody's going to get left out usually.
And I think because the game was so close, and again, I think the trust issue was involved in that. Put that rookie in who's been dropping the ball, and this game is close, and we saw how anything could happen, and the fumble that helped the Browns. So I think it just came down to that.
Now let's look at the defense. They played very well against the Raiders. They were
You think
forcing
so?
turnovers. Yeah, I think so. Maybe it was part of the opponent, maybe it was the defense, but they forced turnovers. They obviously didn't let them get into the end zone until towards the end of the game. This defense seems to be getting better. Are they really, though? Or is it the fact that they played Jacksonville and they played a bad Oakland team?
I think that helped. You can only play the teams in front of you. And I remember going into that Jacksonville game, looking at those 3 opponents and saying, this is a chance for some of these guys to get their confidence back. And obviously they went out and gave up a ton of yards to Denard Robinson. But overall, they really only gave up 10 points in that game until the very end, where they had 2 ridiculous turnovers deep in their end. And the score was actually, I think they got 23 points or 24 points or whatever it was. But the defense, especially in the secondary, played pretty well that day. And then we saw that again last week, where by far that was the secondary's best game. And again, these teams aren't that good, but you've got to get your confidence somewhere. And I think guys are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable back there. You're starting to see some of the guys that were brought in here really contribute. Dante Whitner, by far his best game.
Yeah, this defense clearly is better when Dante Whitner is making plays.
Oh, absolutely. And Tom, if we remember during the preseason, they talked about the strength of this team would be the defense. Yeah. And I think it was just a matter of time for them to prove that they are the strength of the team. And just these past 2 games, they've looked great.
So with Dante Whitner having such a good game, Paul Kruger kind of had a good bounce-back game. Who do you guys think right now is the most important player on this defense?
I still think it's Joe Hayden. I think Joe Hayden, and you saw when Joe Hayden's at the top of his game, as he pretty was close to it last week. I thought he played really well. I thought that was also his best game of the season. what he means to this defense. You can say Carlos Dansby, I think he's been pretty solid all season. There aren't a whole lot of guys that, Kruger, I think, was playing really well before he got hurt and has really been kind of gutting it out for a couple games. I thought he played a little bit, but I think he felt better last week. But other than Dansby, I still think it goes back to Joe.
One of the questions I have, and Tom did a good story on Kruger, is I think he was the forgotten man. He's the one that they spent all the money on last year, and he didn't play as well as people imagined. Mm-hmm. And then he stepped up, and Tom did a good story on that and how he's just kind of turned things around.
And you can see the impact he had because he was kind of slowly starting to get pressure on Derek Carr as that game was going along, and then finally he found something. He got by his blocks and he got to Derek Carr. You could see him kind of working though throughout that game, kind of that veteran guy who's been there before.
Yeah, and they need him right now because really they're not getting a whole lot from the other guys. I mean, this pass rush they're starting to get a few sacks here and there, but still, Mingo doesn't have a sack, I don't believe. Sheard has played pretty well. I think he may have 1 sack, 2 sacks at the most. Dansby's I think has 3, but they need Kruger to come through. And credit Paul Kruger. A year ago, as bad as he was, he never ducked questions about how poorly he was as far as rushing the passer. And he's been, he's a guy that's really, he works at his craft. He's a guy that's embraced this new defense. He's not always lined up in the same spot. They've moved him around a little bit where they did not move him last year. And he's embraced it, and when he's healthy, he's played pretty well.
Now, Tom, you wrote a story comparing the Raiders draft to the Browns draft this year. Of course, Khalil Mack and Derek Carr versus Johnny Manziel and Justin Gilbert. Let's talk about Justin Gilbert because he's actually put together 2 pretty decent games in a row. Now, the bar's a little low based on how he started, but we've seen Justin Gilbert actually making plays. So, Branson, do you think Gilbert is starting to turn that corner?
Hopefully that he's starting to turn that corner. At least these last 2 games looked at it. He's not, to me, I think earlier he was just a little bit just too aggressive, just out there, just trying to make plays and try to do things. I think now he's letting the game come to him. And I think that's probably affects all rookies. Things are so fast, so you're trying to move fast, and I think the game is slowing down for him now. And it'll be a real good test in this next game, especially against these bigger receivers, to see how he steps up.
Yeah, Tampa has some big receivers, Tom.
Yeah, they do.
Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson, and it seems like, we know Hayden's a smaller guy. And Gilbert's not huge, but he's kind of known as a physical corner, at least, when he actually is playing physical. So it seems like this is an opportunity for Gilbert to kind of show what he's capable of.
Yeah, I think Gilbert, he's 6 foot maybe. I think he's the tallest guy back there. And it's funny, I think Joe plays better against big guys. You think Antonio Brown's not a real big receiver. I think he seems to play sometimes better against the taller receivers. It's going to be a bit of a challenge as far as the size matchups for all these guys. And again, you hope that Gilbert can maybe put 3 in a row together. And again, we were talking earlier about guys who needed a boost of confidence during this 3-game stretch. He's number 1 on the list, and so far, so good.
Yeah, Joe, the big receivers doesn't affect Joe as much. He's such a good athlete. He was a great high school basketball player. And I think he steps up to the challenge with those bigger guys. I don't want to call it the little man complex, but he definitely steps up when he has those challenges.
Except when he has to go against Jimmy Graham.
Oh, yeah, well, that's
completely unfair.
I don't think anyone can shut down Jimmy Graham. No. If somebody can figure that out, they'll make a lot of money selling that to the rest of the league. And with Hayden, look, he's a physical guy too, and he likes to jam guys up a little bit on the line, and maybe that's why speedier guys give him a little more trouble than the bigger guys.
I think Joe has admitted he's had a slow start to the season, but again, he's coming on a little bit. That secondary, Tayshaun Gibson, we'd be remiss not to mention him. I think he's playing at a Pro Bowl level right now. He is just a ball hawk back there. Anything that seems to go errant, he's getting his hands on right now.
The guy with the best hands on the team.
Yeah, that's right. He says he has the best hands.
According to Tayshaun Gibson.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's been fun to watch this kid's development over the last couple years. From a guy that was absolutely a guy that came in as an undrafted free agent and now leads the NFL mid-season in interceptions.
And, it's easy to kind of say, well, he's taking advantage, it's because of hits on quarterbacks, it's because of bad throws, but it's been a long time, Branson, since the Browns have had a safety that could even do that.
Oh, yeah.
And frankly, that interception he had was as good a catch as you're going to find.
Yeah, bad play by the Raiders. But anyway, but yeah, if it was that easy, it would be more guys with as many interceptions as he has, but it's not. And he's definitely been a ball hawk back there, and definitely been one of those bright spots for that defense back there.
What is this team going to do about the return game?
Oh, I'd say punt. I've never seen, I can't remember them having, we think of this team starting back in '99 and how bad they've been at just about everything, but they've always had a decent return game. I mean, Josh Cribbs has gone to multiple Pro Bowls. Yeah. And and even last year, Benjamin, before he got hurt, I thought he was okay. He had the one huge game and a couple other decent games. But the punt return, the kick return to me is just, the game. It's almost extinct because so many balls get, but they're getting nothing from the punt return. I mean, when they can catch the ball right now, it's a plus for them. And I'm not saying that to be mean. It's just the way it is.
They've got a designated catcher. I mean, when's the last time you've seen, when they think the punt's going to be inside the 20, they send their designated catcher, Jim Leonard.
The last time, I've never seen that before. A guy back there just to catch the ball. He's not a threat to run or anything. You hope that's not something that's going to hurt them in the long run. Well, before we were talking about 6-1 and 5-2, those type of conversations. But if they do get on another roll and they are in contention for the postseason, I mean, that's going to be a glaring weakness for them in the kicking game.
Yeah, and it obviously hurts you offensively because you don't get as good a field position. When you are struggling offensively, if you have somebody back there like a Josh Cribbs or someone like that who can instantly change field position or get into the end zone, that makes everything so much easier.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's cost them. I mean, it has been partially responsible for 2 losses. You think the Baltimore game, where Benjamin doesn't field the punt late in the game, and it changes the field position. And then a couple of weeks ago, they had a game. Well, actually, the game at the end of the Jacksonville, where they're still in it. They're within a score, and Jordan Poyer. They put Jordan Poyer back there. He has one go right off his face shield when he easily could have, it's easy to say it from the press box, but just let the ball go into the end zone, start at the 20.
All right, let's talk about Brian Hoyer, and then we'll also get into that relationship with Johnny Manziel, because he talked about that a little bit today. But let's start with Hoyer. A few weeks ago, people were talking contract extension. They were talking about, is he the answer at quarterback? Is this his job for the rest of the season? That wasn't even a question at the time. Branson, I think you actually called Brian Hoyer, at least at the time, the best quarterback in the AFC North. Things have changed dramatically for Mr. Hoyer. Do you guys still believe in Brian?
Why are you looking at me?
I'll let you go first.
Well, I do. Maybe I jumped the gun a little bit by saying he was the best quarterback.
I think at the time you had a valid case.
Yeah, and at the time I said I thought he was playing the best at the time, which was still debatable by you two. But we'll see. And right now, the type of pressure that's on him is that teams are gearing for the run, and he's going to have to win games by throwing the ball. So I'm going to see, and the rest of us are going to see if he's going to step up to that challenge. If he doesn't, then the talk about the contract and starters type money, then that all goes out the window, and the Browns are in the driver's seat.
Yeah. I think, first of all, we may get to this question in a second, so I guess I'll wait on my answer. I think that he's been adversely affected by what we've been talking about, the loss of Alex Mack, teams loading up against the run. Brian he's a very smart quarterback. I think that he's, people don't like the term game manager, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, He's been very good when he's been able to manage the down and distance. When he's working with decent down and distance, I think he's been very effective, and the numbers have shown it. But when they lost that running game and a little bit of the pass protection, specifically against Jacksonville, it's made it more difficult on him. There is a reason why he was a backup for so long and had trouble finding his way into starting. And he's played exceptionally well, I think, for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. But again, when you can't run the ball and you're not a quarterback that has that cannon of an arm, that are one of those top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the league, which Brian isn't, you're going to struggle, and that's just a lot of guys are in the same boat.
And he's a smart guy. I mean, he knows they drafted Johnny Manziel, obviously. He sees the number 2 jerseys in the stands, even with the Brian Hoyer chance that he was getting in that Steelers game. He knows what's going on, and he knows that this is his opportunity to, maybe that one shot he's going to get at really getting paid in the NFL. Is he maybe pressing a little?
I don't think so. I think that it goes, to me, the other 2 things. It goes more to the lock of the running game, the injuries. I don't think that he's like gotten to this point and all of a sudden thinking I'm going to make big money here if I keep going.
Yeah.
I just think it's been what's been happening with the teams that they're playing. They understand now that they've got to stop the running game, and it's very difficult. Look, I think that as long as the Browns are in contention and they don't go on some 3 or 4 game losing streak, it's going to be his job unless he gets hurt. I just don't see Mike Pettin changing quarterbacks if they're sitting at 5-4, even if he's still kind of not back to where he was the first 5 weeks. I just don't think they're going to make that change. Now, it all goes out the window if they fall out of contention in the last 3 or 4 games of the season.
I think they want to find out what they have. And I know you said that being a manager is not always a bad thing. I think it is, because you have to come to a point as a quarterback, you have to win the game with your arm. And you don't necessarily have to have a big arm, but you sometimes get pressed in those situations where you have to win a game. So I think Brian Hoyer will get into this situation where he has to prove that, or he's just going to be a guy that's a manager and they're going to pay him that way.
Well, I think he has proven that. He's won a couple games down the stretch. Yeah, you have to, Joe Thomas says this all the time, and he's absolutely right. When the game's on the line in the final 2 minutes, you're going to be throwing the ball.
Yeah.
But if you can avoid what happened to Brandon Weeden, and not to compare the two, but Brandon Weeden had no running game. He was not a game manager at any stretch. He had to throw the ball a lot, and you saw the more he threw the ball, you saw his issues and why he's kind of a backup now, except on Monday Night Football where he played very well.
Right. But that's what I mean, Tom. Those earlier games, he had a running game.
Yeah.
He had that, but now he doesn't have that running game, and he's going to have to win the game with his arm, or he's going to be relegated to being a manager.
And those throws we've seen without the running game, like the underthrow to Travis Benjamin when he had gotten behind the defense on Sunday. We've seen a couple others where guys have had to come back and get the football. Those are magnified when you can't fall back on that running game and keep a drive going. It seems like when he's been asked to make those big throws, they haven't always been there. Now, what about the relationship between Brian Hoyer and Johnny Manziel? There's been some talk about that, and Hoyer today said that they have a good working relationship. He said, I think he's done a great job at the role that he's in, embracing it. He's probably disappointed he's not playing, but any competitor would be. That's a good thing to have. Do you believe they have a good relationship?
I think they're okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really think it matters that much.
I mean, they don't need to be best
Yeah,
friends.
as long as there's not a locker room fight, not as long as we're talking about Quincy Morgan and I can't remember who he got in a fight with, as long as the quarterbacks aren't throwing punches in the locker room, you want there to be a little bit of friction. I think Mike Pettin even kind of, back in the training camp, kind of, look, we don't want these guys to be buddy-buddy. They're fighting for the same job, and that's natural. I mean, again, especially when you're in a situation, this isn't Tom Brady and Brian Hoyer. I mean, Brian Hoyer's clearly above him Johnny right now, but not, again, a 3 or 4 game losing streak, and we're probably having a different conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, who cares? Who cares if they're, as long as, they're focused on the same thing of giving the Browns W's. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And as long as they're not fighting, or any guys on the team are fighting, and then it's okay. Just be competitive and try to let the best man stand up and win that position.
And what matters is they're winning. Obviously, like you said, if they were losing games, it would be a completely different discussion. But you don't shake this up when you're winning football games. When you're going into November 4-3, everybody else except one team in your division has 3 losses. You don't shake that up by suddenly going to Johnny Manziel.
No,
you keep riding this while you can.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. And again, though, but Brian, I think, is also savvy enough to understand if they do lose 3 of the next 4 games or 4 of the next 6 games, they're going to change to Johnny Manziel because the organization owes it to itself to see what they have here before they can make any kind of decision on Brian Hoyer's future. Now, if Brian Hoyer leads them to the playoffs, then they're going to have to figure out how much they're going to give Brian Hoyer. But I don't, if they fall out of the race, Johnny Manziel's going to be in there at some point.
For all that we've talked about, if I had told you at the beginning of the season, the Browns are going to be 4-3, they're going to have a chance in the division, they're going to be even, like I said, with everyone but Cincinnati, would you have taken that? Would you have taken where they are right now?
No, I wouldn't have believed that at all. I predicted them to win 4 games. So the rest of the year, I'm predicting they lose them. Oh, no, I won't. It's been a pleasant surprise on how things have worked out. You had a rookie coach, you had a rookie GM, you had a quarterback that was unproven, and everything has worked out so far.
Do you think they can keep this going? Is this for real?
Well, we'll find out. They've got to get this next win to really set themselves up, to give themselves a chance, because the schedule is going to get harder. Let's be honest here.
Absolutely.
They've not shown an ability to win on the road. I mean, they had the miraculous comeback against a bad Titans team. They play a lot of road games coming down the stretch. So they've got to. The biggest thing to me is they've got to get back to being able to run the football. If they can run the football close to what they were doing early in the season, I think they do have a chance. If they can't get back down there, I think it's going to be very hard.
Who do you guys think is the best team in the AFC North right now? It seemed like it was Baltimore for sure, and then Sunday happened. Who do you think it is?
Wow, Cincinnati swept them. I was shocked. Steelers are trying to get back in it. That's a good question. Can you give me another week? Or do you need an answer now?
I'll give you until next Thursday night.
Another week. I'm going to still lean with Baltimore because questionable calls at the end of that Bengals game. And I think until that game, they were playing the better football. So right now, I picked the Ravens.
I picked Baltimore at the beginning of the season, even though I really like Cincinnati. For me, Cincinnati's issue is they're just too inconsistent. I think they're going to be in the playoffs, and we'll see what they do there. But they sometimes just lose games or tie games where you're still not sure what you have with them. To me, they have the best talent in the division. I mean, from the quarterback's the big question there. But they have a lot of talent on that team.
And they have for the past few years.
Yeah, but it's there's moments you just shake your head with them.
All right, guys, before we go, nothing in ink here, subject to change. What do you got Sunday?
I have the Browns. I have the Browns to beat Tampa Bay. They're struggling team too. Issues with their running game. And I think the Browns will pull this one out. And I think it's going to be close.
I'll take the Browns 21-17.
Oh, giving us a score.
Oh, wow. Big score guy.
I'll tell you, Tampa, I know they're the team that they're going to play that already has a win. But just looking at them, they might actually be the worst of the 3 that the Browns have played so far. I don't know. Oakland's got a pretty solid case.
Come on, be cool with Oakland now.
But Tampa, look at 32nd overall in defense, 30th against the pass, 23rd against the run. This offense should be able to get right against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and Lovie Smith.
We said that against Jacksonville. I think we said that against Oakland, too.
And Lovie Smith's a defensive guy.
Yeah.
And that's just some bad numbers for him.
All right, that'll do it for another edition of Browns Insider. Our thanks to Isabel and Dave helping out behind the scenes. Branson Wright, Tom Reed, I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.